Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a yogurt pound cake, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, it has a beautiful golden brown crust that's nice and crisp when it's freshly baked, yet inside the cake is soft and moist with a sweet vanilla flavor. And what's really great, this is just so easy to make. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a loaf pan for this cake. And this one measures 8.5 by 4.5 by 3 inches deep, which is 21.5 by 11.5 by 7.5 centimeters. Now you can butter the inside of your loaf pan, which I'm going to do. Or you could just spray it with one of those non-stick sprays, or really you could just lightly oil your pan. So what I like to do when I butter it is just melt a little bit of butter, and then with the pastry brush, just brush the whole inside. Make sure you get in the corners. We don't want our cake to stick, because we don't want to lose any of that beautiful crust on this cake. And then what I like to do is to just take a piece of parchment paper and put it in the bottom. Now you can put it in the bottom, kind of flip it over so it has some butter, but well, I'm just going to, my brush, lightly butter the top of the parchment paper, and that way it won't stick too much to the bottom of our cake. So that's our pan. So now, like I said, we don't need a mixer for this. Either a stand or a hand mixer. No, we're just doing, it's really like a dump and stir cake. Bowl for the wet, what? A bowl for the wet, a bowl for the dry, and then we just mix them together. So simple. So we'll start with our dry. 1.5 cups, which is 195 grams of all-purpose flour, like plain flour. To that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram. I'm using a fine kosher salt, but you could just use like a table salt. And then I'm just using a whisk that. And that's it for our dry. Now, I'm just having like a really plain where we just have that sweet vanilla flavor. But this cake is really good. If you wanted to add right now, you could put in some chopped nuts. You could add some dried fruit. You could add some chocolate chips, either dark or semi-sweet or white. Or you could even add the zest of either a lemon or an orange in here, if you wanted that kind of flavor. But like I said, we're just going to have the sweet vanilla flavor for this cake today. So for our wet, I have in my bowl 2 large eggs, and have your eggs at room temperature. Now, 2 large eggs is 100 grams, you know, if you want to weigh them. And I'm just whisking them to break them up. I know people are going to ask, yes, if you wanted to, you could use your stand mixer, your hand mixer, but really, that's just one, you know, I just find it easier just to do it by hand. Now, technically, I will say this isn't really a pound cake because a pound cake is supposed to have butter, but we're using oil instead. But you know what? It looks like a pound cake. It tastes like a pound cake, the texture. So I'm just taking some liberty here with the name, or you could call it a yogurt loaf cake, I guess. So you will need a 1/2 cup, which is 120 milliliters, 120 grams of a flavorless oil. Now you could use like corn, a vegetable, canola, safflower, or even a light olive oil. And yes, if you really wanted to and you want it to be, you know, technically perfect, you could use a 1/2 cup, 113 grams of melted butter. But the good thing about oil is it contributes to the moisture of the cake. And the other thing is, I like to refrigerate this cake because it does have yogurt in it. So when you use oil, it keeps the cake still soft. Like if you use butter, and you put it in the fridge, it kind of firms up. So that's another reason for oil. But I'll leave that up to you. And then for flavoring, I'm adding 1 teaspoon for 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. So just whisk that in. And then of course, it's a yogurt cake. We need yogurt. So I'm adding 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 grams of a whole milk plain yogurt. I'm using the Greek style because the Greek style is a little thicker than just your regular whole milk. And I have that at room temperature. If you don't, all you have in the house is maybe a reduced fat, what I would do is drain off, if there's a lot of liquid in there, I would drain that off before adding it. Mine is a little, but this is whole milk plain yogurt. It is so good. It has this rich, tangy flavor. It's so thick. It's just wonderful. And it, again, like oil, it adds really a lot of moisture to our cake. And if you go to the joybaking.com website or YouTube channel, I have lots of yogurt cakes because I just love it. I love that they're all, because most of the ones, I think all of them use oil, so they're just dump and stir. You can just get it into the oven in no time. Okay, so whisk that in, and then we need some sugar. You will need 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons, which is 180 grams of granulated white sugar. Mine isn't exactly white because I'm using an organic cane sugar, but either one. And just whisk that in. So that's all our ingredients. Then we're just going to mix them together and bake it off. Okay. So I'm going to pour the wet into the dry. The good thing about this cake, it will last a long time in the fridge. I'd say 5 to 7 days. So if it lasts that long, I just love this cake. Hot cup of tea or coffee, slice of wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to use my whisk. You could just use your spatula. Just mix them together. You want to make sure all that flour is moistened. Try to keep it inside the bowl, not like me. Okay. Switch over. Okay, I'm just going to get that out of the way. And just make sure everything's mixed. Looks good. So into our loaf pan. I mean, maybe 10 minutes maybe that took. I call it like a everyday cake. Okay. Looks good. And then I'm just using, you can offset spatula or just the back of a spoon. Just even that out. Okay. Just gonna quick tap. Now, baking. Everyone's oven is a little different, as I always say. I would say 45 to 50 minutes. I do rotate my baking pan about halfway through, front to back, to get a nice even bake. So visually what you're looking for is it's going to rise, it's going to turn a beautiful golden brown. There will be, don't worry about this, you're going to get a crack on the top of your cake. And when it's done, you will just start to see it pull away from the sides of the pan. And the other way, of course, is a toothpick. Take a toothpick, insert it into the center. It will come out clean. So I'm going to say about 45 to 50 minutes. So our yogurt pound cake is done. So put your pan on a wire rack. Doesn't that look gorgeous? Beautiful golden brown color. It's crisp. And then you can just start to see the cake coming in from the sides of the pan. There is some cracking on the top. And when I put a toothpick into the center, it came out clean. So what I'm going to do is let this sit for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll come back and take it out of the pan. So I let the cake cool about 10 minutes, so now we'll take it out of the pan. So either use a knife, or I've just got an offset spatula. Just run it around the inside there, just to make sure it's not sticking to the sides of the pan. And then just flip this. Still a little warm. Okay, and because we buttered the top of that parchment paper, it didn't even stick. Sometimes it sticks, but it's really easy to peel off. But we'll just right side up. And then you want to let that cool down to room temperature. And as it cools, the outside crust will become quite crisp, but that's the first day. But once you cover and store the cake, it will, the outside crust will soften. So I'm not going to wait because I made this one yesterday. So the crust has softened. So if you're cutting this one the first day, I would use a serrated knife because it's kind of like a bread with that crisp outside crust. But the second day you can just use a regular knife. But I've already sliced it, so I have one slice here. It's just I think it's a beautiful looking bread. Now, I don't bother with the frosting. I mean, you could, but it's an everyday cake to me. It really tastes good. To me, it doesn't need anything. So we'll try that. Oh. Really moist, soft. It has a sweet vanilla flavor. So I just have it plain like this, or I must admit my favorite way is, even if I have like a regular pound cake that's made with butter, I still like a little butter on top. But with this one, especially since we use oil, I'm going to put a little butter on top. Everything's better with a little butter. Good too. Just need my hot cup of tea or coffee. I'd be really set. So, as I said, you could wrap this and store it in the refrigerator. 5-7 days, it'll stay good. You can. A lot of times I freeze it. So what I do is I actually slice it and then just put a little piece of either parchment paper or wax paper between each slice. So if I just go, I feel like and it's just me, I just feel like a slice of cake, and just take one slice off. Now, there's other ways you could do this cake. It's really nice if you serve it with some fresh fruits, some berries, or maybe some fresh peaches, nectarines. And then you could have a little dollop of whipped cream on top of there, or even like a scoop of vanilla ice cream. It's another way you could serve it. But this is a great everyday, people come home, just want something a little sweet. Perfect cake. So you must try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.